a Monday morning, 9 a.m. edition of the Ad Podcast. This episode is for all you sales savages and ladies out there that want to get the week started with some great advice from a sales trainer and a sales leader. Marcus Chan is the founder and CEO of Venli Consulting Group and the creator of Real B2B Sales Training, where he helps B2B sales teams drive predictable revenue through modern buyer-centric selling. He's a former enterprise sales leader himself, so he has walked the talk and sat in all of our shoes before he went over to the training side. Marcus is known for his practical, no-fluff approach to sales execution, coaching teams on pipeline strategy, deal acceleration, and closing complex enterprise accounts. And he's a frequent speaker and advisor to fast-growing B2B organizations looking to level up sales performance. Marcus, thanks so much for coming on, man. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Hey, I think we'll have some fun today. I'm happy to share all my mistakes I've made in my entire career.
Let's go. Well, hey, nothing like a Monday morning at 9 a.m. when all of us are opening up our inboxes and getting ready to plan out our week and attack it. And I think this will be a good boost of juice to all the sellers who listen to my show because they sell into the marketing and media agency profession. But, I always like to say we are all salespeople in some way, so
highly transferable skill in all parts of life.
Exactly. Whether we're dads selling ideas to our kids or our significant others or our immediate sphere of influence. So before we get into it, why don't we start off with a little bit about, your background? So where did you grow up? What did you study? And I don't know about you, but I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be in sales when I was going to high school or college. So would love to kind of understand how you found your way into the profession.
100%. I think it's probably similar to you. I mean, it's very rare I've ever met anybody who says, I just want to be in sales. That was definitely not my situation either. So I grew up in a really small town called Springfield, Oregon. And I'm actually the middle child of two Chinese and Taiwanese immigrants. They actually escaped the Cultural Revolution, came to America in the late 70s, absolutely nothing, so completely broke. So we grew up very, very poor. My parents opened a Chinese restaurant in Eugene, Oregon, which is a neighboring town. So I grew up like working in the restaurant at the age of 5. So for me, I really didn't know what I was going to do growing up. But I just knew working really hard seemed to kind of help me in that part of my career. Now, fast forward, I ended up, going to the University of Oregon because it happens to be also be in Eugene, Oregon as well, which is great because my parents say, hey, Marcus, you can go to any school you want to go to, but you got to pay for it on your own. So I went where I got the most amount of money. So and still at this point, I mean, I really didn't know what I was going to do. So like at first I wanted to be an architect because I was like, oh, well, I loved art growing up. I drew a lot. I'm like, maybe I'll be an architect. I had no idea. I did a job shadow before I got started in college for about a day of an actual architect in town and realized it was completely different than I expected. So I actually threw that application away and went undeclared to college. So eventually I had to pick something, right? Like I got to do something. So I ended up graduating with a double major in marketing and Chinese.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was going to do with it, though. I really didn't know. I was just like, wow, I speak Chinese at home. That should be an easy degree. And business and marketing kind of applies to everything. So it was still not really sure what I was going to do. Now, when I graduated, though, I actually interviewed a number of different places. This is in 2007. And this is before the recession happened. And I was actually really fortunate because I actually interviewed, had 5 different job offers.
Wow.
And it was from, on the low end, a $29,500 base salary role in B2B sales up to like a $60K a year role. And that was like a low level analyst in like a financial institution. And for me, I just wasn't quite sure where to go, but I actually ended up going for the sales job, but not because I saw it as a sales job. I saw it as, the way it was sold to me was, hey, this is a startup division of a Fortune 500 company. There's 0 customers. You need to go build a client base up. You'll learn how to run a business. You learn how to handle a P&L. There's a huge opportunity to really pioneer something. And that sounded really exciting to me. So I didn't understand and see that as this is a B2B sales job where there's 0 customers. You need to build from scratch. So I jumped in head first, and there was no training. There's no playbook. There's no marketers. There's no customers. It was 100% cold, pure outbound. And that's when I realized on day one, when I go out and knock on doors physically, like walk into businesses, that this is a pure like cold call business. And that was my first taste in sales. And I wish I could say, Dylan, I was absolutely amazing, absolutely crushed it. I was actually the worst rep. So for the
Let's
first,
go.
like, I mean, I was outworking everyone. I made more calls, more outreach than anybody else. Didn't close a single deal. Well, all my peers are closing deals.
Wow.
Now, fast forward several months, about 2 months, my boss pulled me in his office at 4 p.m. on a Friday and said, Marcus, I'm going to fire you if you don't turn this around. And I started getting real scared because the economy started getting bad at this point, because this is 2007, if you remember.
Yeah,
so
right before kind of the
business
floor
started to shut
dropped
down
off.
already. Unemployment was already going up. I'm like, I have to like, I need to figure this out. I was like, I had three choices. Number one, I'm going to get fired. Number two, I could try to quit, get something else, which is unlikely. Or number three, I can give it 100% and hopefully I don't get fired. So I'm like, I'll go for number three. So, fortunately, eventually figure it out. Had some pretty good success. Ended up staying in my corporate sales career for another 13 years. In my first 8 years, promoted 12 times in my first 8 years. Hit number one in every single role. Got to the point where I was running a 100+ person sales org. We were doing 9 figures plus a year in sales. Had a lot of fun doing that before I started my business in 2019. And now, essentially, I work with organizations across the board, usually doing at least 10 million plus, that have multiple layers of leadership, and helping those orgs really identify where they're leaking revenue and putting in systems in place to actually improve it long-term wise. So it's not coming in just doing like a 1-hour workshop with the team. It's figuring out what are the core constraints of the business that's holding back from revenue, and how can we go fix that. So been doing that for over 6 years, and that's been a lot of fun. But much of it is because of the mistakes I've learned early on growing and scaling businesses.
I love it. Well, I got 2 questions just based on your intro in addition to my other 10. So let's get after
Sure.
it. All right. Something that you said was really interesting, because it's something that I always held as maybe a misbelief about sales. So I got one of my formative sales roles in 2008 as well. I joined a boiler room. I was an independent film financier, which sounds very sexy.
That does sound cool and sexy.
But what that actually meant was I had to pick up the phone 100 times a day, call attorneys, and see if those attorneys were willing to invest in a movie about a famous court case.
Oh,
so
wild.
we would dial 100 attorneys. We would generally get 10 on the phone, and then we would try and get one to take a package, and then we closed on average about 25% of those. But the components of that this was 2008, and even attorneys lost money, and they weren't investing in anything, much less a movie.
That's right.
So my tactic was essentially, we had to be in the office by 7 a.m. because we were calling the East Coast first, and then we were allowed to leave by 1. So what I would do is I would get there at 7, I would stay at 1, and then I would just sit in the office with my sales manager, usually from about 1 to 3. And then my sales manager would leave, and then I would keep calling all the way to Hawaii at 9 p.m. because I could call going back 3 hours. So to some degree, I got more reps, I made more calls, I sent more packages, so I closed more deals. So I outperformed guys on my team that had been in the industry for 20 and 30 years. But it did come down to me. I just thought I could outwork these guys. But, you talked about the idea that you couldn't, just outwork your team in your first gig. How was that realization that like sometimes inertia and sweat equity just won't cut it? And what was the calculation that you made to turn things around?
Great. So I'll give you an example, right? So I remember my very first week. Again, there's no training. They gave me a manual written by people who'd never done sales before. And my boss said, day one, he's like, hey, I want you to and by the way, this is like, there was no lead list. There was nothing, right? I didn't even know how to build a lead list. So he said, Marcus, I want you to go outside. Walk out, and don't come back till you have 30 business cards. I said, okay. I'm like, all right. He's like, if you do that, you'll probably book at least a couple meetings. I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty good. Okay, let me see what I can do. I went knocking over 60 doors that day. I didn't book a single meeting, didn't generate any type of lead or anything. I'm like, huh. And I was like, whoa, I'm exhausted. This is like summertime in Portland. I mean, it's relatively hot. I'm more like, like a shirt and tie, right? I come back to my boss and say, hey, I did it. But what do I do now? He's like, great. Sales is a numbers game. Do it again tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So I go, I do it again the next day. Exact same result, right? So now I have over 120 business cards, like I have a stack of business cards. And I'm like, I did the same thing and I didn't book a single meeting. He's like, great. I'm like, what do I do now? He's like, call them. I'm like, okay. So I sat and I called every single one. And again, did not book a single meeting, got hung up on, got yelled at, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, this is what sales is. I'm like, okay. So day 4, I'm like, what do I do now? He's like, call them again. I'm like, okay, all right. Again, not all of them answer, right? So I call them all again. Exact same. So now I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, like I have walked into over 120 businesses. I made a few hundred calls so far. I haven't generated any type of momentum, inertia, or anything else. And this basically repeated for weeks on end. Okay. I tried making more calls. I tried to do more cold email. I tried to do all the stuff, but I wasn't like booking any meetings. While I watched my peers and they were like booking meetings, closing. They were doing a fraction of like my inputs. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I grew up working in a restaurant. I'm like, maybe I'm just good at like, like maybe like that customer service background, not like outbound trying to get people like, I'm not a salesperson. This is not how I'm wired. Like I worked in the back of a kitchen and as a cook. So I was like, this is when I started to realize it, right? And I'm like, and so after like several weeks of this, I started booking a couple meetings, but because I also didn't know what I was doing, nothing was converting to a closed deal. So what I realized at the point was, you can have 100 sales calls with different prospects, but if you have a 0% conversion, you're still at 0% of a result.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right?
Like it doesn't matter, right? It's like the math wasn't mathing. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, because even as my boss, like, it's a numbers game. It's gonna take time. I'm like, now I'll say also I probably had probably not great territory as well. So like there was like things didn't run at that point. Like I had like we were zip code based. I had 4 zip codes, and everyone else had like 4 times that as well. So like there was like little things like that. But like also like number one, I had not a great territory, but also I was lower skilled. So my conversions weren't quite there. So what I started to do during this journey as well, because again, when you don't know any better, you just don't know it's bad. So as part of this, I was complaining to my wife or girlfriend at the time, like, hey, this is the worst. Sales sucks. It's a bad economy. It's because of X, Y, Z, whatever. I mean, blame my boss, blaming everything. She's like, well, like, why don't you get some sales books or something? Because you've always been a reader. I'm like, yeah, I should do that. So I started getting sales books and I started to realize like there's other components to look at, not just the inputs, like conversions and funnel and process and all that stuff. So I started like that realization started making me realize I'm like, I need to improve what I'm actually doing. Like, if you're batting 0, it doesn't matter how many times you swing the bat. Like, you're just not good at the thing, right? And that was a big realization. I also realized, well, like, I also lacked a lot of self-awareness because I didn't know what I was doing was good or bad. You can't improve if you don't know what you're doing. Like, for example, if you're driving the wrong way on a road trip, doesn't matter how hard you push that gas pedal, you're still going the wrong way. So that realization I started to realize during that 2-month time frame. I'm like, I am not skilled with this. I need to get better because what I'm doing right now is definitely not yielding a single result.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it also makes me think about like how important good sales management is too, right?
100%.
So like, like when I was green in that boiler room, my sales manager, his desk was strategic, or his office was strategically placed where he could hear all of us, and he would just sit there and listen, and like he'd get his work done and he'd just be listening to our calls. And if he heard us like just yapping on with some guy that liked to talk, he would come out and get like right in our grill, and he would be like, he would go like that, and he would be like, he would feed us a line, and we would have to just stop and like drop that line and see if it worked. And that was such a like eye opener though for me though, like when he would like be like, all right, time to rip the Band-Aid off on this guy. He just likes to talk. He's a lawyer. Here's the line. Here's the qualifier. You say it right now and then shut the F up and see what happens. And that was like the most amazing like real-time job training, was to see that you could like
Good
take
live
some,
coaching on spot.
yeah,
Yeah.
live coaching on the
So
spot,
key.
but also, with a sophisticated prospect like a
Yeah.
lawyer, you could
Yeah.
stop them dead in their tracks with just words.
That's right.
And the other cool part was, again, that, that I mentioned that 1 to 3 o'clock hour, where everybody else was done, the phones would be hung up, and I would just go in there and he would just tell me stories and give me little pieces of advice
Awesome.
and talk about what he heard that day. And he just gave me like literally like 2 hours of his time per day if I wanted it.
Wow.
So
That's
I
amazing.
think,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it was, it's like, I credit him and one other mentor to be like the formative people in my sales career, at least. But so, I think that framed the question back to you of that particular situation was like, great sales managers are not just giving you advice on the metrics. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like so many sales organizations can get lost in the metrics,
Yeah.
but they're not addressing the qualitative versus the quantitative.
Right.
What is the best way for managers to address those gaps? Like, if they see, like, it looks like if everything on paper looks great, but they're not getting the result that they want, where should they be focusing on that qualitative feedback?
Yeah, really good point. So I think a lot of time I find for a lot of sales leaders that are not like your leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you had the great mentor you had. So like I find a lot of leaders, they maybe tell their reps the what, hey, make more calls, right? Like get more meetings, close more deals, whatever, right? But they don't teach them, like the how or the why. And sometimes it might be because maybe they lack the skills of actually the actual role of the salesperson, or they just have no idea, right? It's poor leadership. So, for instance, like whenever, here's what I think about it. I think there's many steps to this, right? So there's the proactive and then there's the reactive approach. So the reactive approach is you're a sales leader, your reps are not performing, right? So you see it in the data. And I always say before you go and you start trying to coach them or whatever, the first thing you want to do is get in the trenches and see what's going on. So similar to how your mentor was actually listening, whether they're side by side with you or listening like close by, he can see what you're actually doing, right? It's kind of like, if you're going to swing a golf club, you can tell me how many swings you're doing, but until I see you hold the club and swing the club, I can see all the components from your foot mechanics, how you're shifting your weight, your body positioning, your shoulders, your back. I can see how you're doing different things to coach you accordingly. And a really great sales leader will have the data as a signal, but then they'll go and get in the trenches and see, okay, hey, if they're not performing in any part of the process, whether it's having a discovery or making calls, they're going to go and observe and look for key patterns, right? And from there, they're going to coach and teach them in ways it's ideally a repeatable way. So the mistake I find some people make is, let's say, for example, like, I've had leaders do this too, is they listen to one of my calls or they're on a call with me. They get done. They're like, here's 30 things to fix. And I'm like overwhelmed. That's like so much, right?
That's a
I don't even know
lot.
what to fix first, right?
Yeah.
Versus it's like, and maybe there's a bunch of little stuff you can teach them for sure, but identify what's maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 things that if they just did that would solve a big chunk of the problem. So like, for example, let's just say it's cold calling, right? And yes, there's many scripts, etc., but maybe their tonality is just really like too soft, lacks confidence. That might be a single thing that we just worked on fixing that. They're just going to book more meetings because they have better tonality, right? So you can teach them frameworks around that. But then it's constant. It's also making sure when you're coaching them, you're recognizing what they're doing well so they continue to do it. And then you identify those couple things to teach and train them on after. Right. But then having them do it with you. So it's not just like, for example, like, okay, we're going to go through, well, I'm going to teach you how to qualify a prospect on the phone. Here's the 4 steps we're going to do it. Okay, cool. Before you just say, you just teach them all, or you teach it first. Then you say, cool, now you do it back to me.
The role play.
So you have them role play. I call them real plays. You do it live, make it tough. So this way they get that repetition live on spot to help burn it into their brain and get it done. Because reality is you don't want your team to practice on prospects.
Yeah, because you only get so many at bats, right?
That's right. So for example, let's go back to the cold calling example. You made 100 calls, only 10 answered. Those are 10 chances you had to book a meeting. You don't want to practice on those 10. You want to practice way beforehand, right? So this is like whether it's with your sales leader or even after. But at the end of the day, if anyone's not performing, like I always think, I think in actually 3 key steps, right? So obviously you have the data first, right? But the first piece I always say is, number 1, you look in the mirror. Did you as a sales leader provide the proper training, tools, resources to ensure they're successful? So you as a leader, did you show up before them? Number 2, your process. Is your process dialed for what you taught them? Is it in a repeatable way that they can understand, or do you just babble and just talk about how you're an awesome rep and just do these things, right? And then third is the employee, right? Is it them? And chances majority of the time when I see people not performing, it's something in the mirror themselves or something in the process. In reality, if you get the mirror dialed, which is yourself, and the process dialed, then it might be the employee at that point in which you can make a different decision based off that.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Those are 2 good bellwethers before you start blaming the rep.
That's right.
All right. Is cold calling dead? You and I just talked about formative sales roles that we learned because we got lots of reps and we got lots of at-bats. You door knocking, which I've never had the pleasure of doing. It always sounds fascinating, but I never had the opportunity. And then, for me, cold calling, it was amazing because like in one way is it made the universe feel infinite because we had these like big lawyer encyclopedia. They were like phone books for lawyers called the Martindale Hubble. And we would just pull them off the wall and flip pages. And like, it's like, oh man, I can call lawyers all day. I have an endless supply. But now it's a lot harder to break through. It's a lot harder to get an office line. It's a lot harder to get through secretaries. People don't just answer the phone as much, but I also received a cold call. I only got 1 cold call last year that I actually took a meeting from, but it was a really kind of like a eye-opening experience because it was from the sales development organization called Alley-Oop. And I would just be curious of your thoughts, like, is cold calling dead? And is that to the detriment of the current rep environment?
Great question. So what is dead is single channel outreach. So if, for example, if your only channel is purely cold calling, like you are significantly lowering your chances of book meetings, right? And part of it is understanding like where buyers are at as well, like, and how they actually buy. So like, if you think about, if you're only cold calling, that's not good, right? I won't say it's pretty close to being dead at that point. It's the only thing you're doing. However, if you are doing omni-channel reach outs, so you're calling, but you're also going to be leaving a voicemail. You're also going to maybe message them on LinkedIn or whichever platform they might potentially be on based off what you actually sell, for whatever offer you have. You're also sending emails, maybe doing physical gifting. Maybe you can do in-person stuff. Maybe you also engage in with different events. Maybe you have other marketing components as well, like, webinars or other things too. So my point is more so like, if you only have 1 channel, it is way hard to be successful, right? But if you're able to hit on multiple channels in a really strategic way, it increases your chances. So the data shows right now the current connect rates are typically about 4 to 5%. So it has like basically got cut in half. So you were at 10% was quite good, right? And now it's like 4 to 5%. So you make 100 calls, you have 4 to 5. Now, what does that actually mean though? Those 4 to 5 to answer, that means you need to be ready to rock that call. So that means when you make that call, like, did you already research in advance so you know what you're going to be talking about, what you're going to reference? Are you going to make it feel like a personalized call, or are you just a number? Like, if you just a pure numbers game, it's really generic, it's a little bit different. But if you're calling and you're like, hey, Dylan, the reason I'm reaching out is because I did a little bit of homework and I saw your organization has grown from, it's grown 25% over the last year, and you added 10 more people in your marketing department. Well, the reason is because I do X, Y, Z. Well, it's like, okay, this person did a little homework in advance. That's a little different conversation versus it's just being a real generic type of conversation. So then on top of that, how effective are you actually on handling objections, going through objections on the phone as well? So most people convert about 20% on the answer. So that means if they have 4 conversations, they're probably going to book maybe 1 meeting. So if you look from a pure conversion perspective, how can you increase that to say 50%? Okay. And there's many ways to increase it, which is like you get better research, you actually practice, so you actually sound good on the phones, you actually know what you're going to say, you've written out scripts, but you practice so many times, you have a social proof on the calls, right? So like all those things can help you on the call. So if you're relying purely on just cold calling, it's very hard to get to where you want to go. However, if you combine multiple channels as part of your outreach, you will book more meetings. And sometimes it's going to be like, you might call a couple times, don't get any answers. Then you're also sending some emails, and maybe they're opening their emails, and then you see it, then you call them, they might be more likely to open it, right? Maybe sending a video message. So there's many ways to actually do it. I think the issue is when people rely on just one channel and they don't make it relevant or personalized to that person.
Yeah, that's totally great advice. You know, in the advertising industry, we have this saying. I forget what author came up with it, but it's called the blue car effect. And the blue car effect basically says, like, you know, when I never saw a blue car, and then I bought that perfect blue car, and once I have the blue car, I see blue cars everywhere.
That's right.
So the same is true. Like when you see an advertisement or a marketing message somewhere in the world, you're like, oh, you just kind of ignore it. We have what's called ad fatigue.
Yeah.
But if in the same day I see a Facebook ad and then I see a billboard of your company, something happens in my mind where I'm like, wow, these guys are everywhere. And they make that connection.
The power of familiarity as a result of it. That's right.
So I think that multi-channel aspect that you were talking about, reps need to think of their calls and their emails and their outreach as part of the marketing funnel. It's a touch point. It's an impression. So you have to work hand in hand with your marketing partners to make sure that you have lots and lots of other kinds of impressions. So I love that.
I think it might have been Trust Radius. They did a study where I think it was like 11 different touch points that they have to encounter before they book a meeting. And it's not necessarily just direct outreach, but it's all the things you kind of mentioned before they're like, okay, I feel comfortable booking a meeting.
I love that. All right. Should every great sales producer eventually become a sales leader? This is something that I definitely have struggled with. You know, I was like you, I was a top rep at most of the companies that I worked at in my career. And then eventually they would always want me to then build a team, hire and train SDRs, manage territory. And I always found that I was so focused on external relationships that I did a bad job of focusing on internal relationships. And that's not just amongst my team members, but that's like ops and marketing and all the people who supported me in the pipeline or in the delivery for clients. And then the other thing I noticed is because I'm a salesperson, I'm also very easily sold. So when
we are the most easily sold, actually.
So when I interview people, I'm always looking for the glass half full, perspective. And because I kind of fell into my industry by accident, I always feel like, oh, I don't care if he was a dishwasher at a Chinese restaurant. He could be good at this, and I don't spend enough time looking at the resume. So what are your thoughts on producers becoming sales leaders, and should they be interlinked?
Really good question. So I get asked this quite often from a lot of like individual contributors who are like, because that's what happens, right? You're crushing it, Dylan. They say, hey, can you make more of you? Can you make clones of yourself, Dylan? Right? And I always say the first thing I always ask someone who's maybe like wondering, should I go into leadership or should maybe say an IC, individual contributor, which is what gets you more excited from a gut instinct perspective? What gets you more excited? Either closing a big deal on your own or helping someone else close a big deal and you get zero credit. So like just that by itself can tell you quite a bit, right? And that's the first piece. And by the way, sometimes people, they may be like, oh, I think actually helping other people would be really great. Sometimes you'll see like they're great at selling, they're helping their team, and they feel really good. It feels good to help people. And they're like, maybe I do want to go into that, right? And that might be a good signal to go to jump into leadership. However, it doesn't have to be forever, by the way. I think some people think it's a forever thing. It doesn't have to be a forever thing because you might realize it's not for you. Because as you know, once you go to leadership, it's actually a very different set of skills that you actually have to be really, really good at. Like when I think about, when you're a salesperson, and this is referenced in Sam Walton's Made in America book. He mentioned there's people who are like an I-shaped person, in which they have one singular skill and they're really good at that singular skill. So for example, they're really good at prospecting and selling. They're good at generating business. That's like their number one thing. That happens for a lot of salespeople, right? Who end up being quite good. Now, when you go into like leadership roles, you need someone, generally speaking, they're more T-shaped, meaning there's one single thing they're really good at, but across the board, they're also good at other core skills that they can either develop into or they're more innate to them that can help them in other functions, right? So, for example, like if you want to be a really good sales leader, and this depends on the sales role, but you generally need to be really good at looking at numbers, metrics, P&Ls, forecasting, etc. That may not be a core skill for some salespeople. So, like that's a key thing you have to learn how to do. You also need to learn how to hire, train, recruit talent. So even understanding that skill can be really key. You also need to make sure operation, like after your deals are closed, like you might need to ensure the back end post sales process is down, which means you need to understand back end wise how does that all work, because what your team is doing on the front end is going to impact the back end, right? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you may realize by stepping out that sales leadership role, you're like, this is way more, and like it's not just you being a super rep. Like if you want to be really effective in leading and scaling organizations, you need to be able to scale people is what you have to be able to do. And that's through your level of leadership, understand the whole business. So when someone's like, hey, I'm not sure if I can do it or not, if you're instinctually you're like, yeah, I like to close big deals. Great. Absolutely nothing wrong going down the IC path and just going up market as that path. And if you're interested, yeah, maybe you can dabble into leadership, see if you like it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You can always go back, right? Like for me, when I first stepped into sales leadership, it was a fake promotion. They said, Marcus, you've been doing a great job. We want you to those other operations. They've been underperforming. We're not going to give you a different title, but we want you to manage these two people. You have your own number. Well, we need to make this operation profitable. So you need to grow and scale this operation, get them successful. And here's also your own personal sales target too. We're not going to pay you any more money. We're not going to give you anything else, but just show us what you got. So 22-year-old Marcus is like, that sounds awesome. Great. Let's do it, right? So what a deal, right? And I almost like gave up on leadership at that point because I didn't know what I was doing, because I thought it was the same thing. I'm like, hey, here's how I run. We should all do the same thing, right? So that was a realization very quickly that leadership was definitely an art to it as well. So since that point, I started getting better at leadership and learning, making mistakes as part of it, right? Just like any other art, and treating like a craft. And I think a lot of times for a lot of people who step down a leadership role, most of the time there is no playbook for them. They say, Dylan, congratulations, you are now the sales director. Good luck. Hire 5 people and make sure they're great. And you're like, I don't even know where to start first, right? So just mentally understand that. So if you're stepping down a sales leadership role, you need to go and develop your own skills as a leader. Because there is no playbook for most companies, and that's a key thing that has to be developed. Otherwise, you'll find it very hard to scale the next level, and you're always going to be running on a treadmill or a hamster wheel.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think it's, for me, especially on the recruiting side, I think it's a great case for using executive recruiters. That way, once you get down to the final 3 candidates, you know that all 3 of them are potentially good, right?
Hopefully, because you are also paying them maybe 20 to 25% of the actual base salary, and sometimes they're just trying to get someone over the line because they're like, Marcus, Dylan, come on, just pick somebody. You've seen 100 candidates. I'm like, I know exactly what works though.
That's a great point too. Yeah, not all recruiters are created equal either,
That's
especially on the sales side.
You gotta know how to find those recruiters. That's the key too.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
All right. So, something else you mentioned, you talked about in-person being an important channel. I think of that as the perspective of like owned and operated events, the conferences or the regional dinners or the things that you're doing as a team. But I'm also thinking about, the fact that, it seems like more than ever, there are so many conferences.
Sure.
Do you think that's because people are having kind of a natural course correction to like the AI slop of it all? Like you're getting so much inbound now as a buyer, so much LinkedIn stuff. Your Pavlonian wall is up as high as it's ever been. So the in-person opportunity, somebody kind of takes the close sign and flips it to open for 3 days. And they're like, all right, I'm here for 3 days. I'm going to meet with people. I'm going to use the fact that we all paid a certain amount of money as the qualifier to that we're at least at this level of like, common ground. And then I'm going to take, 15 meetings, and then I'm not going to answer my email for another 6 months. How important is the real world in a world of AI where, buyers are getting more inbound from people that they don't know or don't potentially trust than ever?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's absolutely vital, right? In the sense of which it's pretty obvious, right? But I think events are like one component, right? But it's being able to break free of like just the slop, if you will, and get outside that kind of comfort zone. We get that pure focus, right? Now, there's for sure events and dinners and all those things too, but I think about even in-person sales calls, right? Even
Mm.
flying out to your customer's like location, their headquarters, having a sit down with their team, with the execs, and how live conversation is really, really important. And a lot of people don't realize is, especially for a lot of salespeople who maybe have sold maybe in the last decade, where maybe
Post
before,
COVID, basically.
yeah, even post COVID, it's been primarily virtual. Like in tech sales, most of them have been virtual for a long time, anyways, right?
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize
Right.
that.
So
Because
like,
but before COVID, I used to jump on a plane half the time.
right. So like, you and I started in sales a little bit earlier, so we were kind of already used. That was already part of the kind of that just happened, right? But for a lot of people that are in tech sales, or maybe even post COVID, they just have never thought to do it again, right? Where that in person, what we don't realize are all those small things that really build trust. So, for example, let's just say, it depends on the situation. They're picking up from the airport, there's a car time together, right? Or if you go into their lobby, there's like you're waiting, you're checking in. There's that time where you're engaging with that receptionist who's up front. You're also able to see what's the office look like, what are people like, what's the setup, what's the energy, what's the vibe, right? There's even
Mm.
that, like, let's say that you're walking from the waiting room, or the lobby, if you will, to the exec's office, or to maybe like a main conference room. There's that conversation and rapport building that happens right there. There is, this natural like humanistic elements of when you shake their hand and you look them in the eye and you're just saying, "Hey, it's great to meet you. We've been talking for the last 2 months virtually. Great to meet you in person." There's a level of bond and connection that's like deeper than just the virtual component, right? And then you're sitting down, you're live in that meeting together, right? And you have your phone away. You're engaged. You're talking. Like there's body. You can see the whole body language. You can see everything that's happening, and there's something very powerful that's like beyond just like virtual with that. And then of course, once you get done with all of that, there's that rapport that you walk as you walk away. So there's like all these things that disappear via Zoom. You hop on a Zoom call. We're here. Boom. We get right into it. A little bit of fake rapport, and you get right into it. Right. All right. We're done. We'll
Mm.
close here. Or on to the next meeting.
Yep.
But there's more attention residue that happens when you're in person. In person, that trust is quite relevant. So I think it's absolutely vital, especially if you can incorporate as part of your sales process. If the deal is worth this big enough opportunity, you should be flying out, having live conversations with them, because that could be the difference between you versus somebody else who has not been doing that.
Yep. I think you're 100% right. I think, COVID was the worst thing that happened to the sales profession, in my opinion, kind of pushing us all to this virtual world. I think it's great, from some perspective, like virtual is a great format to convey information, but in person is where relationships are built. I've never in my entire career built a relationship on Zoom. I've conveyed information, but the relationship really doesn't happen
Yeah.
until there's some type
I
of
th I think it's a
face-to-face
good
interaction.
starting point, right? So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example, right? So I have a group of people we become friends with, and we mastermind typically a couple times a year. And we started last year. First, it was a virtual thing. We just kind of did one meeting virtual, right? And then we met up in person, and we hung out all weekend at one of the lake houses. And the bond that we had created was so deep because of that, right? And now,
Mm.
and it's amazing because like you can see the kind of even the text chat engagement leading up to leading up to it is okay, but after it's like now it's like nonstop, right? And now we've had several meetings since then, right? We done some business together as well, so it's like a deeper bond because that trust is like so powerful. And there is something to be said. It's very old school, but when you break bread with people in person, I
Mhm.
mean, there's some I don't know how to describe it, but there's a human element to it that's so powerful.
Yeah, it's primal in a way. A lot of times
Yeah, that's right.
we just don't realize how much our reptilian brain
That's
still,
right.
we think we're so smart and sophisticated, but so much, millions of years of
That's
instinct
right.
are still
These monkey
being.
brains are not that big.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Have you seen an AI SDR that you would trust
Mm.
for the full process of prospecting? Something that would find a lead, qualify it, create the initial outreach, book the meeting, basically do all of the pre-sale up to you as a rep showing up to a call. I can say that I have not, but I'd be curious what your opinion is.
Yeah. Also no. Yeah. Also no. Right.
Let's
I think
go.
it's like so. I think it's the ones I've seen. It's been. Well, let me take a step back. So there's many of these AI answers getting kind of pushed out, right? These different tools, etc. The ones I think can work. I think in certain use cases, if it's a
Mm,
little more like if it's like a more controlled, contained environment, right? And let me give you an example. So this is like the first time I was actually like really impressed with an AI agent. And I'll say this is a B2C example. Okay. So this is probably 4 weeks ago. My dishwasher stopped working. All right.
mm.
It's like 7 p.m. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go. Like, I'm just gonna call. I'll just leave a voicemail, right? Some of these are like mom and pop shops, whatever. They might not get back to my if I message via Yelp. So I call the first one, and somebody answers. I'm like, oh, and they're like, hey, this is like Alice. I'm an AI agent for ABC appliance repair. How can I help you? I'm like, this will be interesting. Let's see what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
So I say, hey, hey Alice, here's my situation, and like it was like I was impressed. It was like, oh, hey, completely get that, Mark. I'm really sorry to hear. I had some showed empathy. Really sorry to hear. It must be sounds really frustrating. What we can do is we can come out. We can first do just a diagnostic to check out your dishwasher to make sure we solve the right thing because you might need to replace it. If you'd like us to book, I can book that for you. Would you like to book it? I'm like, boom, it goes right into like a close. I'm like, okay, but I'll give them object. Well, but hold on though, how much is how much is the diagnostic, like whatever, whatever they call this? She's like, great question. It's $110 for the diagnostics. So we'll get done. It takes about 15, 20 minutes. We'll figure out exactly what to solve, and then we'll tell you what that's going to be. If you want us to do the repair, we roll that into the overall repair as well. So this way it's all bundled together. Would you like to book the diagnostic? It goes right. I'm like, okay, all right, boom. So I booked it. I was like shocked, first off. And then we book it. It gets my information. It like confirms that I got the text on the spot. All right. And
No slippage.
I mean, I was blown away. So I'm like, that was wild. I told my wife about it. She's like, I'm like, watch this. I'm gonna call it again. So this is like we're at dinner. I called it again. I just want to show her, right?
Yeah.
And it answers like, it's hey, this is Lisa. I'm the AI agent for ABC Repair. Oh, by the way, is this Marcus? I'm like, oh,
It knew you called. It knew you were calling back.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was very impressive, right? So, but I think that I say the situation where that's a controlled environment because people are calling in for a specific thing, and it's like they usually only so many things they're going to call about, right? It's much more controlled. Versus when you go outbound, there's like the messaging can shift quite drastically as well, right? I've seen another use case that can get worked quite well where if it's like reactivating old leads. So it's a reactivate. The leads are already in the system. There's already some sort of former engagement of some sort. So it's a reactivate. So there's a little bit of history already. So there's data around that. Again, don't know how effective it actually is, but that's something else I've seen too. But what I have seen across the board, because we've tried building our own as well, is regardless of whoever you use, it's not like I pay that company, and it starts working perfectly. It's like there's a training component, but there's also like ongoing management, like making sure because it's gonna have hallucinations. You have to keep monitoring, keep training it, keep adjusting it, and making sure it's like you actually need to manage it like a person, right? However, the pros are it never gets sick, doesn't get upset, doesn't get emotional, doesn't say I can't work today because my boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with me. Like it's like it just works, like a majority of the time, right? But it requires constant oversight. So I think with some of the simpler use cases where it's like there's less options that's probably going to go down that path. Better versions for AI for that. For the more complex situations like completely cold outbound, not quite there yet.
Good to hear. I am always asking other sales leaders because I want to make sure I haven't missed the boat yet. But I'm
I'm
still.
always looking. I'm like,
Oh yeah, you gotta experiment. I mean,
100%.
there was a time in which I was like shooting like 200 emails a day from like nine different inboxes.
Yeah.
And what I figured out is I was just diluting my brand and I was just spamming people. So I cut it all off and went completely back to, old school and having way better results. It's kind of like what you're talking about, like bad input out, bad results,
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, the AI for prospect is only scaled crap. That's all we've seen. Like it's like a scaled mediocrity is what we've seen. It's like, oh, they're still not that great.
yeah, 100%.
Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. Can't hear you. I heard a little. Oh, I can hear you now. Perfect. Good. Oh, nope. Kind of.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Perfect. I don't know what happened there. I guess I probably touched something I wasn't supposed to. You know how these hiccups go. All right. For the last part of the interview, I want to focus on salespeople as creators because you've done an amazing job building a personal brand. One of the reasons I reached out to you, as I self-admitted, is I'll interview anybody with a blue check on LinkedIn. Because that's LinkedIn is basically saying, okay, this guy is the top of his profession. He is a trusted resource within the LinkedIn community. He knows what he's talking about in his vertical. As I was doing my research on you this morning, I noticed that you had over 7,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel. 7,000 may not sound huge to a lot of people, but in the world of B2B sales, that's a big number.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious, did you start thinking about your personal brand or developing your personal brand before you went over to the thought leader coaching training space? Or was that something that you needed in order to establish credibility in that world? Because for me, I started the podcast in 2017 really as a way just to talk to sales leaders at first. And then what I found out was I can use it to talk to more sophisticated prospects, not just sales leaders. And then it's provided, millions of additional benefits outside of those two things at this point. But I'm just curious, do you think the new kind of breed of top sales rep is going to be this kind of hybrid, somebody that brings an audience and a megaphone and a channel with them as a sales professional? Or do you think that is only necessary if you're going to jump the ship and do the types of work that you're doing now on the training side?
Yeah, really good question, right? So I think let me take a step back. I'm kind of share my journey, right? So when I started putting content out there, and I'll say first off, I started dabbling a little bit in the content game like 2015 or 16. I started a side hustle. So I used Instagram. I was kind of posting on that as kind of a buildup, right? So I wasn't even using LinkedIn at all.
Wow.
But I got kind of sucked into, like, I came from corporate B2B sales, corporate environments, big companies. And I kind of stumbled upon this whole other world of internet marketing in like 2012, 2013. This is before it got big. This is before everyone and mother had like a course and all that stuff. So I kind of started to stumble into that, and I would hear these stories about how people use social media as a marketing channel to bring eyeballs in. I'm like, that sounds really interesting. I'm just going to do that for my Instagram for, just for fun, see what happens. Oh, I had nothing to sell, by the way. So that started kind of building a little bit of an audience, and then I created a product, and actually some people bought my product. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Now, when I started my business, went all in. I knew, I'm like, this is basically free marketing. That's how I viewed it. I'm like, LinkedIn is basically free marketing, but not in the sense of like, hey, buy my stuff, because I understood the stages of customer awareness for a buyer. So I could just be like, hey, buy my stuff. I need as many people in the unaware and problem aware stage. So by knowing that, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start putting content out there that will be really high value and useful for my target market. So that was my only goal, right? I wasn't trying to be an influencer. I wasn't trying to be a thought leader. I'm like, how can I be helpful to people? So I just started like posting a lot. And by the way, I took a look at all my competition and what they were doing and not doing. And I did the opposite. So like, for instance, I found at the time, majority would not put dense, it'd be very fluffy stuff, right? Not detailed and not dense. So I'm like, okay, that's an opportunity for me to write really dense, high value content that's very tactical, exactly what to do. I also found that most of them were not good writing stories. And teaching through stories is really powerful. So I started writing really powerful stories as well. I also found a lot of them actually weren't that good at their job. They were in sales. They didn't
Wow.
have any results. So it was very easy. I'm just going to talk about what I did, my results, and my teams, and what we've actually have done. Right. Like, and I didn't go job. I only worked for 2 companies my entire career. So I started posting all this stuff as well. And I also found that most of them were not doing video. I started doing short form videos at the time. Right. So I found I was a way to differentiate. Okay. Now, over time, as I start to realize, everyone started kind of jumping on that bandwagon over time as well, which is fine. So I'm like, that's fine. I will now produce highly dense content to show my skills. That's simple as that. Like, demonstration content on the best ways. And that's from super dense carousels. That's super detailed and very tactical. Because no one was doing it. They're posting like, it's like fluffy, like, hey, like when someone says this, just say this one line. Sure, that's great. If it doesn't go viral, that's fine. But I want buyers.
Yep.
I want people willing to pay for like that level of implementation with these core skills. So I started doing that. I started doing long form YouTube, right? And like, it wasn't just like a 5-minute video. I started doing like 45-minute, 60-minute, 2-hour breakdowns on YouTube, right? Very dense stuff, basically courses. Like, I think we have probably like, I don't know, 500-600 hours of content on YouTube now from just a long form content, not including like the shorts, right?
Crazy.
So like, I started to make sure I was differentiating in that way, right? So that's how it kind of evolved over time. Now, to answer your question, should they post content or become content creators? I'll say, well, it depends on what your goal is with it. So like, if you want to use it to, let's call it build your own brand, I think that's a great idea, right? Post about what you're skilled about. However, it depends on what you want to be known for. That's the thing. So I think a lot of salespeople post about sales stuff because that's what they know, right? Which is that's completely fine. But like, if they're trying to use it to get business, and let's say they sell to like CTOs, chief technology officers, talking about sales is not going to bring those people in, right? So it has to be so you get really clear on what's your goal with it, and then you create for that. But if your goal is like, I just want to do this to kind of share my knowledge, that's great. Then post about that. However, I do believe if you are a top 1% salesperson and you want to use content as a way to grease your pipeline and your deals, it's a great idea. But that means you have to make sure your content aligned to it. So I'll give you an example. Let's pick a hard one, which is like, if you let's say you sell cybersecurity. So you're selling to like chief technology officers, CISOs, etc., right? You can't post about sales content, but what you can do is you can identify what are the top problems CISOs, CTOs, director of ITs are they worried about and stressed about in terms of cybersecurity. And now, how can you start creating content focusing specifically on those things? So your content's designed to attract those people in as a result of what you're selling to them. And then, of course, you can get really strategic as well with commenting and making sure you're identifying certain IT thought leaders who have your audience to comment on those things to bring more eyeballs in. So there's a whole different strategy as part of that too. But using that as part of a strategy to help build your brand, position yourself as the expert, you are now selling like a more like a consultant versus just another salesperson.
I love that. One of the things that I always thought about from a sales perspective is like, hey, I can only do so much outbound. I can use some of these AI tools, but as I found out the hard way, that's just spam.
Yeah.
So what I can do as a human is tapped out based on how many hours I can put in each day. But with content, the content's out there working for you. Like, 19,000 people saw my LinkedIn content last week. I couldn't have emailed or texted or sent DMs to 19,000 people.
It's like a free salesperson.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of working for you when you're not working.
That's right.
I would be curious how and do you leverage paid to accelerate that? So one of the things that I've been finding is if I have a piece of content on LinkedIn that performs above the mean and I put $500 of paid ads behind it, then I can actually see a force multiplier and a return on that ad spend. You know, like I got the chief marketing officer of Danone yogurt and Prudential Insurance to come on my podcast from a $500 ad. So be curious how much you are leveraging paid as an accelerant to your organic strategy.
Really, really good. So a couple things. I do it a little bit differently, right? So typically, if I'm using, I mean, as you know, there's many types of ads, right? There's like awareness ads, which you're just kind of boosting content. It sounds like kind of like what you did, which is great. And then there's conversion content, which you know there's direct target to ROAS. There's a direct ROAS impact. We know that. So typically, I'll use ads for retargeting, right? Of conversion posts. So if I know it's already converts really well to organic, it's easy for Venli to sponsor that Marcus Chen post to drive in more people that have maybe visited my booking call page, but didn't get to that thank you page. So I can make sure we're driving towards that, right? That's one component of how we do it here. Now we use ads in another way as well, more on YouTube, more for top of the funnel stuff. So we use discovery ads on YouTube, because those ads are the ads that show up on the right side of your desktop. So it looks like a recommended video, and you can't even tell it's being promoted. So specifically, we have different campaigns that we run with those specifically, right? Where we have one for specific keywords that's been searched, right? So we each week when we have a new YouTube video, if it's relevant, we'll just add to the campaign, so it drives towards people that have certain keywords, right? We have another one for competitor sites. I mean, my competitors' websites, it drives towards that, right? I have another one for in market, so the search intent already. So this way, we're driving that kind of top of the funnel. And then, of course, we have our YouTube pretty well optimized, where it goes into, once they watch one video, it jumps into another video and jumps into another video. And now they're down this YouTube rabbit hole as part of it, right? Which then cycles into different lead magnets that we have, into LinkedIn, back to our site as well. So it's this whole flywheel. So we'll see people go from YouTube, maybe then they'll go onto my Spotify for maybe the interview that we did. Then from there, they'll go onto my LinkedIn, send me a message about something, right? Or they'll view my profile. And then we have a whole messaging strategy behind that. So it's this whole flywheel effect that we utilize. But we primarily use ads for our business in the unaware stage, or prime aware stage, if you will, on YouTube. We do Google ads as well, keywords as well. That's more so if they're searching certain things, then we bring them in as well. But real top of the funnel stuff, right? And then bottom of the funnel stuff is how we utilize ads.
I love it, man. Well, hey, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for spending time with the audience today, especially our sales warriors that tune into the show. So Marcus, where would you like to point people to learn more or connect with you if they enjoyed our conversation today?
100%. So first, thank you so much for having me on. If you want to learn more, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can follow me on YouTube as well, or just go ahead to venliconsulting.com to learn more about what we do.
Love it. And for those of you, if you're watching the show for the first time, don't forget to give us a subscribe or a follow. If you're listening to the show, an honest review is how the show finds a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if there's a sales leader out there, somebody in the B2B marketing space at a fast growing company that you think could get value from the conversation that I had with Marcus today, or really anybody, because everybody needs to know how to sell, don't forget to share the show. And with that, Marcus, I will thank you so much for coming on, spending some time with the audience, and I'll look forward to